Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and happy holidays, and welcome to another author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is an author making their official debut here on the channel. Now, my guest today is a sci-fi romance author based in a little farm town in the States who loves crafting flirty space fantasies with messy, complex characters that feel real, exploring those sparkling years in early adulthood when you are just coming into yourself. And you can find her debut space opera romance, Gamma Ray, now on Kindle Unlimited. And I'm so excited to have her here on the show. So let's give a huge Wandering Scribe round of applause to our guest today, author R. Lynn Hanks. Lynn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome, Lynn. Awesome. I'm so excited to have you here on the show. And before we dive into a little bit of your background as an author and your book, is there a little known fact that not a lot of people know about you?
On the spot here. I play competitive soccer with an adult league every Thursday. So I take off from writing to go kick the ball up the field.
Nice. Awesome. That's amazing. It's really, really cool. And yes, you can clearly see there is a beautiful Christmas tree right behind Lynn, beautifully decorated. And honestly, I think, Lynn, you're probably the first guest that I've had on the show for December that's had a Christmas tree in the background. So it truly does bring about the holiday season.
I love this. Happy to make that happen.
Awesome, Lynn. Awesome. And before we dive into your book, as a teaser for people who haven't heard of your novel, what can they expect to read once they buy it?
So Gamma Raids 1 is a flirty space fantasy. It is romanticized to the T, and you will get that. I have had readers commenting it lately to Taylor Swift in space, and I think that holds really true. I have a very personal approach to my character, so you will feel that romance coming through.
Nice. Very, very nice. So now let's just dive on into your background, Lynn, and just see how this story came about and how your passion for the written word brought it forth. So let's start at the very beginning. Growing up, were you always a creative person, or did this creativity come about later in life at a specific time?
Wow. So I actually take after my dad in that aspect. So I'm a very analytical mind with a surprising, the other side, the left side, the creative brain that also speaks to it. So I feel like I don't know, partially creative in a structured way. But I've always been into crafting, to creating, to making things out of pieces of sticks I would find. And so, yes, I think I've always been part of that creative brain.
Nice. And for writing stories, were you always like writing like short stories or just creative writing on the side? Or was there a specific aha moment that really pushed you down that road that led to your book?
I love this. This is fun. So I have always loved writing. All my English teachers in school, middle school, high school would compliment that. But I was terrified of novels. Like, they're so big. How's anyone going to write a novel? So that was not on my agenda at all. However, I wrote diaries. And it's funny, I actually talked about this on socials recently, but through all those hard years, like middle school, through high school, through college, I was always writing diaries. I'd write about my first dates. I'd write about hope and things that were sad and nights when I just couldn't think at all. So I just glued glitter on the page. So I started with diaries, and I was thinking about that shortly after I met my husband. I was in my early 20s, and I was thinking about those diaries and how I could capture emotion there and kind of a superpower there. And I was thinking about how I had made it past those like scary years in life. And I started writing that night when I was thinking about it. It was about 10 years ago. And this was not Gamma Raids. This was not sci-fi. This was kind of a contemporary romance tribute to my dates of like just celebrating those. I think of them as glittering years because they're so scary, but so fun And you're
Yeah.
kind of coming into yourself, as I kind of said with my intro. And so I started writing, and it was just hobby writing. And I was like, this is fun. I'm going to write this for you. And one night, this is about what, 5, 6 years later, I had this dream that was very clearly sci-fi. It was very clearly going to be Kat and Lee, but I was terrified because I was not a sci-fi girl. I I had just read ACOTAR, so I was getting into a little more of the fantasy aspect. And so
Okay.
first tried to write this dream as fantasy, and it wasn't coming out like I wanted. It wasn't hitting the points. And so one day I sat down, I was like, you know what? We're going to do a writing exercise. Let's pretend I'm a sci-fi writer. And that first day I had Kat and Lee, I had the Academy, and I had gamma rays. And that was the first time I was like, I'm going to publish this. This is what I'm going in on. This is me. And I became the sci-fi girl.
Awesome. That's amazing, Lynn. That's incredible. And it actually kind of leads into our introduction questions regarding the creation of gamma rays with a few fan questions sprinkled throughout. So let's start at the very beginning, the behind the scenes of gamma rays. So as you just mentioned before, initially we're trying to write this as a fantasy story, and then it kind of went into sci-fi, and then it kind of blended the two together. Now, specifically the title itself, Gamma Rays, how did that come about? What was the inspiration behind the title itself?
This is fun. I actually haven't talked to anyone about that really. So I wanted to give them a very unique career. I didn't want them to just be secret agents. I didn't want them to, I don't know, be hopelessly floating. I didn't want to do the pirate angle. And so I played with the idea of raiders, kind of like, typically you do think more space pirates, but I was
Right.
aiming more towards like Raiders of the Lost Ark. Get in, get that artifact.
Like treasure hunters, kind of.
Definitely. Okay, and so then I was like, they'll be raiders. They'll go protect the planet. They'll do the hard stuff, get into places where no one else can go, and then get out and kind of leave it untouched, kind of like Star Trek. Curiously, I've always been more drawn to Star Trek than Star Wars aspect, just for the curiosity there. And so I was going with Raiders, and then my academy in gamma rays is actually based on the electromagnetic spectrum. So as they go about their years, they graduate from micro to radio to IR and visible light, and eventually they become gammas, which is like the top, the ultimate,
Oh,
the
okay.
squadron lead of the school.
Nice. Very, very nice. Now, from that point, from when you got the title and began writing as an author, and this is our first fan question of the interview, would you consider yourself a very detailed outliner where you have a clear beginning, middle, and end, or will you consider yourself a more spontaneous writer?
I'm a pantser all the way. I think that's the fun for me is I write and I explore and see where it takes me. And I think so this is part of a series, and I don't think I can be a true pantser by that point, because by the time you start in on the later books, you kind of know where you're headed. And I do kind of a living outline. I get ideas and I drop it in and I keep going, and it changes and I let it change. So definitely play by ear, see how it goes.
Nice. And when you were writing this, after you established your outline, did you have a ritual or routine that really worked best for you? I know a lot of us authors have different schedules that work best. Some people write early in the morning at 4. Some people are night owls. Some people write 30 minutes a day. What worked best for you?
I write at night. I've got 2 little boys, and one of them just is in full-time school now, so we're good there. But I write at night. The family goes to bed, and mom's up till midnight or 1. So, but I do consistent. I write every day to keep the rhythm. I find if I stop, I kind of fall out of habit, and it's hard. It can be hard to sit down, but I find if I do it every day, I keep up with it. So that's worked good for me.
Nice. Very, very nice. And as another fan question, as you began writing your first book, what really surprised you about that start of the author's journey, actually writing the first draft? Because the first draft is arguably at that stage the most intimidating of whether or not are we actually going to finish this and develop it into the final product.
Yeah. The first draft took me 5 years. I was teaching myself how to do it. There was many iterations came later, but I was learning, and my first draft hit about 55,000, and I was okay with that. I don't think I had a lot of a pressure though, because at this point it was for me. The story
Mm,
was purely for my enjoyment, my heart, my passion. So I just let it do what it wanted. And I found that to be really enjoyable.
nice. And from that point, I think you kind of already answered it, but maybe you can go a little bit more in depth, Lynn. From that stage, what was sort of the goal you had going into, your first book, as well as the promise you were possibly thinking of, not just to yourself, but to your prospective readers once you reach that point of publication?
Yeah, well, originally I queried this book. So I did have a
Ah,
word count limit. So I was capped at 100. I was writing for a YA audience. I wanted to make sure the spice levels and content were accessible. Still do, because I want to make sure both older and younger audience can read this and relate. But I wanted something that was messy and wild and something that you could feel yourself like getting lost with and then grow
mm,
with the characters.
nice. Very, very nice. And as another fan question, this one actually talks about authenticity and characters. So, for your main characters and side characters in Gamma Raids, one of my viewers asked, how do you balance the authenticity of your voice as the author and the characters while also showcasing their complex nature in the world that you've written them in?
This fun. I think a lot of us authors with our very first characters in draft, we put a lot of ourselves in there, whether we mean to or not.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think any of the characters is our Lynn in there. They kind of came to themselves. Kat was, or maybe I should say, they're a crazy extenuated version. Kat,
Ah,
the main female character, I wanted her to be wild and reckless and braver than I'll ever be. And Lee, I wanted him to be the opposite, the complement, the thoughtful one to balance. And yeah, they all kind of just extended from there. I find characters are fun. They're all nuanced. They all have motives. And I played with those a lot. Like I have one character in my series that I could not get a solid grounding on him, Whistler. And I actually based him loosely on someone I knew. It's the only character I had to like steal direct traits from someone and be like, hey, I
okay.
gotta grind you to someone or I'll lose them. Like they were slippery for me. And I knew they would be a reader favorite because they're so fun. So I had to make sure they were solid too.
Awesome. And that actually kind of leads into the next question regarding characters. Is again another fan question. One of my viewers asked, when writing Gamma Raids, who is probably your favorite character to fully flesh out, and who is possibly the most difficult character to flesh out as well? And they also go at an add-on to that. What was probably your favorite scene to write and most challenging scene to write?
This is so fun. Oh gosh, favorite character is gonna surprise people. I love Zane. I get a lot of reader comments at the start who are like, I hate him. I hate him. I'm like, do you hate him? He has so much complexity, so much below the surface that I had so much fun writing him. Hardest might be Kat. Hardest might be my FMC. She is so beyond me that I had a hard time being her because I'm like, she's so wild. How do I be that cool? So she was a hard one for me. Favorite scene happens on their spaceship on one of their missions. It's a really big fight between my two main characters. And I love the delicious intrigue there and the drama. And I had so much fun. I hated that moment. And let's see, hardest scene to write. Oh gosh. That might be another drama scene that occurs on the spaceship between Kat and a ex-boyfriend. I'm not gonna spoil that one, but it's fun drama. It was hard for me. It kind of crushed my soul a little bit. I was like, we're going there. We're not gonna pull the punches. We're gonna hit it like it is. So we did.
Nice. And what about challenging character? Who is probably the most difficult character to fully flesh out in your book?
That might be Whistler. Again, he was a slippery for one for me, and he's so much fun, and he's kind of the balance to the crew. But yeah, I had a hard time grinding, like getting a grounding on him.
Absolutely, very, very true. And I think for us as authors, we kind of find ourselves in this kind of fun pickle of there are so many iconic scenes that we love to write in our own stories, and so many fun characters who are side characters who end up becoming the true star of the book, even though intentionally we want the readers to fall in love with the main characters or the main character in the story. But that's the thing with us authors, how we write, how we tell stories. Readers are always going to pick up very nuanced things. And honestly, it's really, really fun. And just having that engagement with our readers is just so incredible to have. And speaking of engagement, Lynn, when you did make the decision to get it published, what was the reaction like from your beta readers and ARC readers, as well as fans and possibly friends and family?
I think surprise. We'll do family first. I think I had a lot of comments from my brother-in-law, my sister-in-laws who were just like, "You wrote that?" I was like, "I did." And then my husband was funny too. He's like, "This is good." It's like, did you think I spent all those hours on something less good? So that was always funny. Good natures, of course. I love them so much. Let's see. Our creator, I have some really amazing friends. It's an amazing writing community. And I was blown away by like the support and the encouragement and enthusiasm and people who I'd met through, let's see, I promoted Gamma for about 2 years while I was kind of deciding how I would publish it. And I had so many people that were just along with me the whole ride. Like, I can't wait to read this. It's going to be so fun. So I had a lot of positive encouragement, and it was amazing. Great community.
Nice. That is actually really good to hear, Lynn. That is really good to hear. And community and sort of finding one's tribe is something that we're going to be touching on when we get into the business side of being an author, because that kind of falls into networking and marketing ourselves. And before we get to that, we're actually going to go now into what I like to call some reflective questions. And I think these are very, very important to discuss because it definitely shows the other side of us authors, the human behind the writing. And as a little introduction to these set of questions, I imagine, as you said, you've been writing this book for about 5 years. I imagine that there were some high and low points that may have affected your writing. There have been days where you wanted to take a step back and not write at all. Maybe you were stuck on a page or two. Maybe you didn't like how the character was being developed, or maybe you wanted to cut some pieces out. Whatever it may be, those are the struggles that we as authors face. So ultimately, for you, how did you handle the imposter syndrome that comes with being an author, as well as the dreaded writer's block that definitely crippled a lot of creatives?
Oh gosh, so much there. It is not an easy journey, is it?
No, it is not.
Oh gosh. Okay, so I'm one of those ridiculous, I don't know, unicorns. I love it. I don't know, imposter syndrome, we all hit with imposter syndrome. And I've always loved my book. I'll read it 10, 20, 30 times and I still love it every single time. I'm like, it's amazing. But I think just putting your head down and keeping going. I often reread passages I love when I feel down because I'm like, that happened, that can happen again. I can keep going. I have had a lot of plot holes crop in where I made a whole TikTok series on that for a while. You get stuck and it's all you can think about for days on end. And you're kind of half living in your book world while you're trying to function. And it's so hard. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm going back there now. I think just keeping going though and not giving up on that, because you do figure out the plot holes, you do figure out the writer's block, and you keep going. So yeah, just hard work, not giving up, and again, surrounding yourself with friends who are so positive all the time and just reach out. How, you know what, especially that lately, I've noticed a lot of the writing community, they'll reach out to you often. How are you doing? And
Hmm.
I do the same because you meet these people that feel like partial relationships, but you think about them all the time. And when you don't see their face pop up for a while, you're like, how are you doing? And I've had a lot of people do that to check in with me. And I thought that was amazing. That helps you pull through. It's not a one person job. Like writing the book, it's your book, but it takes a whole world, a whole universe, like a whole group of people to get to there. So I
Very
think
true.
having the community helped a lot.
Yes, 100% agree, Lynn. Could not agree more. And this now kind of goes into probably another very powerful question is, of course, what does it mean to be an author in the digital age? Because the industry has changed within the last 20 years or so. I mean, for like small press authors and indie authors, 20 years ago, no one ever conceived that notion. Everyone wanted to go trad. I mean, people still do. You can still see people getting into publishing contract with the big five, and that is amazing and all the power to them. But in recent years, indie authors, small press authors, hybrid authors have been slowly creeping up and taking center stage as being new avenues for authors to showcase their writing. And what's also I found to be really apparent in all three of those, and actually all four if you consider traditional, is of course social media as a tool. Now, social media is a double-edged sword, as I'm sure you can definitely agree, Lynn, that it allows us to connect with so many amazing people, so many incredible authors, readers, marketers, what have you. It's amazing. The indie author community has been so very supportive. I've seen so many incredible authors on different channels and just helping each other and branching out. It's amazing. However, as I said, it is a double-edged sword because social media is very exhausting. It is very time consuming. It can be emotionally draining. And sometimes the algorithm will force us to create more content, even if we're not in the right state of mind, because we're not business people. We're not marketing people. We are storytellers. We love to write stories. And unfortunately, for the types of stories that we write or love to read, we unfortunately leave ourselves exposed to the negative side of social media. And that can be very, very damaging to an author's mental health or anyone's mental health and overall well being. With that said, Lynn, what has still disciplined you to still be the author that you were when you began this journey with gamma rays?
I find it even funner now. I have readers. I have people who are invested, and I've actually found that to be a huge asset, I guess. It's definitely a different experience now. Whereas I feel like before you would write entirely for you, and now you kind of have opinions coming at you, whether you want them or not. Industry people, I want more of this, and readers, I want more of this. And so it is a very different experience, but I don't know, I find it very gratifying because again, we're all building new stories. We all want to reach new readers. And so I feel like it's also inspiring. I don't know, does
Mm.
that answer the question?
No, it does. It definitely does. Definitely, Lynn. And this actually goes into another question, which I want to hear your thoughts on. And I'll give some context for this. I've been doing the show now coming around to 4 years on YouTube, 7 years entirely of podcasting. I was on Spotify for 3 years. Now I moved over to YouTube, and I'll be 4 years this coming 22nd. Absolutely insane. And up to now, I will have about 500, a little over 500 videos, so almost 1K videos, which is absolutely insane to think about. And the reason why I say this is that when I began my journey as an author, I began during the height of the lockdown years, the quarantine years, where a lot of us authors really began our shot. And from the authors that I've interviewed, all of them all agreed that they began their shot during the lockdown years, maybe like the height of when it was really, really intense. That they couldn't go outside, they couldn't go to libraries, they couldn't read out, they had to like read indoors. And ultimately, seeing that and learning from them, I also realized that when things started settling down, the floodgates of the publishing industry just sprung wide open, and you had new voices and talent flooding the industry. And that's amazing. That's incredible seeing all these new voices, new authors really come about and showcasing the stories they want to tell. But this has also led to something that I've also seen, which is an oversaturation of the industry and the shift between those that are passionate about writing and wanting to build a career and those who want to write just to make a quick buck. As we will touch on later, being an author is not a get rich quick scheme, and it's absolutely not. And in more recent years, another thing has popped up, which is the rise of AI. Now, before that, a lot of people argued that with these new authors, we were in a golden age of writers. But with the rise of AI and how fast it has evolved in such a short amount of time, with AI generated books, AI generated content in terms of narration, and so forth, this has led to a discussion of, are we entering a dark age with AI? Now, as I've said on numerous interviews, AI is a tool, and I think as authors we can use AI as a tool properly in terms of, reformatting our outlines, the skeletal stuff. But when it comes to writing, it has no bearing whatsoever. But unfortunately, others don't see it that way. So ultimately, Lynn, here is my question to you. With everything you have seen thus far, from authors that you've interacted with, from readers you have interacted with on social media or possibly in person, and just seeing the trend on the algorithms here and there, do you believe that we are still in a golden age of writers, or with the rise of AI and AI generated content, we are leaning towards a dark age, so to speak?
I feel like we've got to fight like hell right now and type those stories. I'm so passionate about that. That's one of the things that the indie movement, particular and small press, has led right here. Is those are the stories that are breaking the mold. Still, those are stories
Mhm.
that are questioning tropes, that are doing something different with our M dashes. We're the ones who are trying to do things a little different and keep creativity and the human brain alive. And I think that's what's going to fight AI. I think that's what's going to keep us out of the true dark age of letting it take over. You can never replace human brains.
No, you cannot. And I've talked to a lot of narrator friends on the show, and they are very vocal, and rightly so, that while AI may always imitate voices, it can never replicate the passion and the drive and the amount of emotion that goes into reading a line or narrating a scene. Same thing with us authors. Yes, it can rewrite something to be more engaging or fluent, but it's never going to understand the author's thought process of why it chose that particular word or that particular phrase or why the character said this particular thing. It's never going to understand that, and rightly so. Now, as I said, viewers and listeners, AI can be used as a tool for marketing. I have used it for myself in recent posts to help refine what I've wanted, to tweak it a little bit, but it's still all my stuff. It's still all my words. It's just retweeted in a way that's more marketable. And I've actually used that to help Desmond. And again, it's still my voice, but it's a voice that's going to get the most attention. And it has done so for Desmond. And I've gotten a lot of engagement. A lot of people are excited about it. And for me, people excited about an author's work is, at the end of the day, the ultimate goal, getting that engagement and solidifying uh, a promise to the readers that they are going to be entertained, they're going to enjoy this new book from us, and we are still going to write amazing stories, which now leads into my favorite segment of the interview, the business side of being an author. So again, Lynn, as a little icebreaker question, After you finished the final edits with your editor for Gamma Raids, and as you mentioned before, you were querying Gamma Raids for quite a while. Ultimately, when it came to marketing Gamma Raids, what really surprised you about that aspect of the business? And looking back on that journey from where you are right now, is there anything you would have done differently?
This is fantastic. So I feel like I learned to truly market my book and talk about it once it was published. I did all this query stuff and I had no clue what I was doing. I was excited about it. I could perfect my descriptions and stuff, but until I was really actually actively trying to pitch it to readers, I feel like I didn't have a strong pitch. And
Mhm.
now that I've had it out for, it's only been 2 months now about, and I can market my book in so many ways. We can talk about green juice and the FMC and all these. And I almost wish I had gone indie first so I could learn that aspect, learn how to talk about it openly, and then apply that to touring projects. And if I do future projects where I pitch it trad, like I'll probably pull some of that marketing input. And now I kind of know more what I'm doing. And I think I'll have that much more of a leg up.
Absolutely, very true. And that's the thing about us authors. We're always going to be learning new things on the road because it is a mile, not a sprint. There is no finish line, set finish line for us authors. We make that finish line for ourselves. Now, this is a question, Lynn, that I haven't asked a lot of people in a very long time. And this actually was something that one of my viewers wanted to bring up and hear your thoughts on, which is, well, I'll give context to this question. So, as I mentioned before, everybody who writes a book wants to get published. There's no question about that. But for a long time, a lot of people wanted to go traditional. They wanted to get into the big fives like Penguin Random House, HarperCollins, Tor, Ford, Simon and Schuster, and so forth. And as I've talked with authors who have published with those companies and those that have tried to query their story to them, they shared me their thoughts on the process and expressed that the publishing industry in recent years has experienced kind of a hiccup in the sense that there is a form of gatekeeping where they only allow certain stories that may be marketable because of a recent trend outside of the industry. And the publishing companies pour hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars into promoting the books, but the book doesn't sell. Now, of course, I understand from a business point of view, they have to understand for themselves, okay, if we take on this author that has no prior experience, they have no social media presence or presence whatsoever, we have to consider our interests. And I absolutely understand that. But there should be more opportunities for authors to try to get into traditional. But as of late, a lot of people are going to hybrid, indie, and small press because the publishing industry has become so much of, as some people have said, a gambling den because of all of these other things and more. So, Lynn, I would ultimately like to hear your thoughts on this, and if you've ever met authors or readers that have come across this on social media, or maybe you've met an author in person who went through something very similar.
Yeah, as I actually have a couple very close personal friends who've been picked up, who published indie, then got picked up that way for traditional publishing. And honestly, I think the only real draw there is exposure. Whether or not you get millions of dollars behind your book, you're on the bookshelves at Barnes and Noble, and that's something that is very, very hard for indies. And so that alone is probably the single reason I would pitch and go trad again. Regardless of if they push the dollars, you get the shelf space. Um, that being said, yeah, I think that's what I have. Did I miss anything with that one?
No, I think that is very good. And you actually did bring up a good point, which is exposure. I definitely think traditional publishing, the edge it has over small press, hybrid, and indie is the exposure. it does have a team behind the marketing aspect. But that also leads into something else too, which is mismarketing a book, which I've actually had a personal friend of mine gone through that experience. So my friend, fellow author and fellow Wandering Scribe alumni, uh, she told me on the show that when she was writing her book, and if you know who this is, viewers and listeners, you're gonna know this story. And I love telling this story because it does have a very important message. When she went into the publishing world and promoting her book, she told the publisher that my book is a fantasy story that has some romance. Now, keep that in mind. Some romance. Romance is not the plot. There was some romance, but it's not the main emphasis. And what they did was they marketed her book as a romance fantasy novel. And when people bought it, they completely eviscerated her in reviews because it was not a romance fantasy novel. Now, she did not make a romance fantasy novel. She made a fantasy novel that had a romance in it, but it wasn't the main drive. And she said on the interview call that because of that experience, she would never ever write a fantasy romance book ever again. And that was quite the ordeal she went through. So, Lynn, I was wondering if you can also share your thoughts on authors who experience possibly, their books being mismarketed, and if you know any others from your inner circle that have gone through that, possibly during the querying process to make it more marketable to a general audience.
I I can't say I have personal connections who have had that happen, but I do know in today's social media book talk and bookstagram dynasty, they'll eviscerate you if that
Oh,
happens.
yes.
That comes out. That is a very, very real issue that I'm not sure the traditional world is fully taking notice of, how much power they wield
Yes.
for other aspects as well, but especially for this one.
That is very true. That is very, very true. And this kind of and this kind of correlates with, understanding our audience as authors. Now, as you said, Lynn, that when you began writing Gamma Raids, you wrote this purely for you. You wanted to tell this story because you're passionate about it. But I imagine when you were going to publish it and querying it out, you did have to consider, okay, what genre does it truly fall under? What readership age group is going to be interested in a book like this, and so forth. And that all comes from trial and error. And definitely, as authors, I've also learned this thing too from other guests on the show. Something that a lot of people don't really take into consideration when they're writing their first book is for genres, readers of that genre have a particular expectation that that book should meet. Now, I know a lot of people have said varying answers on this topic, which is who do you write for? Do you write for the target audience, the general readership, or for yourself? And it's a 50-50 mixed bag. There's no absolute guarantee that a book is going to hit its target audience or general readership. That's going to be the bottom line. It's never going to be 100%. But there is this balance of wanting to write the story you want to write and not wanting to imitate or replicate another author's style of writing because you think it's going to be the most marketable sense. It's this tight roping of authenticity of the author, but doing the research and understanding the genre that we're writing in. So ultimately, Lynn, for you and Gamma Rate, how much research did you really look into that aspect of being an author, of knowing who exactly this is meant for, the age group, which, as you said, was YA, and toning down the spice to where it could be read by readers young and older? and what that has taught you about the industry.
Yeah. So honestly, Gamma Raids was always crossover fiction. And I think the ages between 15 to 23, 24 in college, there is a huge range of people. There are gonna be some that are very on the naive, and there are gonna be some that mature early. And this book is very much crossover. It's meant to encapsulate all of those ages who, again, something that you're comfortable reading might push you a little bit, but will still be accessible. And I don't know, personally, I'm kind of a 23-year-old at heart. I'm like, I get older and I still feel young at heart. But I don't know. I think there's just a huge range there. And I think the industry is special, especially doesn't know what to do with the new adult crossover fiction because of that. And I feel like in the past, you're pushed either to young adult or adult because you don't know what to do with that middle range. And so, in fact, I was at a reader event for my book launch, and I had some high schoolers come in, and it was kind of a really cool experience. But a high school girl bought my book and was like, she asked to read the first chapter. And so she sat down on her little sofa and read it, and it hit with her. And I liked that could be accessible. But yeah, as far as like researching again, I think you do find out once your book hits, like if you hit your age group you intended or not. I think that's very difficult to assuage.
Very true. And this actually is a fan question that one of my viewers want to bring up because it is something that impacts all authors in all industries, and that is being labeled a cross-genre author. Now, what does that mean, viewers and listeners, when I say that? Cross-genre authors are authors that are not restricted by their main genres. So yes, we have authors that purely write fantasy, maybe thriller, maybe romance fantasy. But then you have authors that, write in a multitude of genres. You have those that write thriller for one book. You have those that write fantasy for another. And some have argued that being labeled a cross-genre author or writing in multiple genres hurts one's image or brand as an author because it doesn't leave a sense of stability that, oh, you're just testing your foot in the water to see which book is going to gain the most attraction. And then from that, then you can say, oh, I am a thriller author, I'm a romance author, or whatever genre you wish to add that label to yourself. So, Lynn, I would like to hear your thoughts on that aspect.
There is so many thoughts on that. So I do think it's smart to think about that as you're writing, because you will latch on to a readership and they might not follow you into the thriller. They might not follow you and you're kind of starting over. However, I feel like also readers are becoming more dimensional these days. And reading's becoming popular. We've got Reese's Book Club. We've got all these spam email book clubs that keep coming in my email. And I think people want more diversity than we give them credit for. For instance, I've seen a lot of fantasy authors who are recently branching into the romantic sci-fi, the romanticized genre. And I think people want to be pushed and educated, and that's going to come with time. So I don't actually think it's as huge of a barrier as it used to be. And again, part of that is a bonus of being an independent author is you're allowed to test that range and kind of test your readers and see who will follow and kind of experience that.
Yes, very true. 100%. Readers are becoming more dimensional, branching out. I know I am myself as a reader. I've been reading a lot of books that I wouldn't typically read. I would have read before, but a lot of these books are from my fellow indie authors. And in fact, the one book that I actually am most excited to finish reading is Whiskey Glasses, which is a Western contemporary romance by my good friend and fellow author and Wandering Scribe alumni, Jesse Dean, who is an amazing individual. And it's really opened up the doors of how to write, certain scenes and stuff like that. So I am looking in that regard. And here's another question, which again is a very powerful fan question. that originally was an interview question I used to ask my guests a while ago, but I kind of tweaked it a little bit. So let's imagine a RP for a second. So let's say, Lynn, you've been invited to attend a book festival in your community, and you are one of the many speakers in an author panel. And the moderator of the panel asked this question to all of you authors. And the question is, how would you tell a classroom full of aspiring writers who are writing their first book understand that in the industry of being an author, there is no guarantee the book you write is the book you're going to be known for, but that is okay and should not be seen as a failure on the author's part?
I think like many of these, like trends, like viral, it's random. It's you don't know what's going to catch, what's going to take. And that's actually from someone who just published my debut. That's actually slightly a terrifying thought to think about the fact that gamma rays might not be my legacy here. um, but again, I think you have to just approach it with the openness that the world is going to accept what it likes, and you don't get to control that. That doesn't mean you're less of an author. That doesn't mean your other book wasn't loved. It just didn't hit the cards. Fate and destiny, and it's just going to do its own will. You let it go and you smile and you write the next book and keep going.
I absolutely agree. And I know that very personally. My debut book that I wrote was The Gathering. And I wrote that during college, during my graduate years. And I was really happy with this book. I really poured a lot of my heart and soul into this. And its origins actually go back to my undergrad back in 2015. So ultimately, this was published, I want to say 2022. So that was about 7 years. But for people who know me, the book that I am most well known for is actually my high epic fantasy book, which is Michael, Last Angel of Earth. And looking back on this book, it was a very, very amazing journey to bring that story to life. It touches on so many themes, so many thematic elements, familiarity, harking back to a style of storytelling that a lot of people are craving nowadays. And looking back, I'm actually happy that people are enjoying Michael, and that's the one that I am most known for at this point. Now, there are going to be other books we're going to be writing as authors as we grow and refine our craft. And soon those books will be the ones we're most known for. At the end of the day, when we look back on our lives as authors 10, 20 years from now, we're going to have fans who have been with us from the very beginning and new fans who are just joining us for the first time because it's that particular book that we wrote that brought them into reading or inspired them to read again, and seeing how we've grown as people and just checking out our work. Because ultimately, the end goal for us authors is an aspect of immortality, because our works are going to outlive us first and foremost. And ultimately, what kind of works we leave behind is the ultimate decision. And sometimes it's a question we don't like to think about. But I mean, if you look at authors from the past, like Edgar Rice Burroughs, Frank Herbert Dune, uh, Dr. J.R. Tolkien, and so forth. I mean, those books have stood the test of time. They're still beloved and read even to this day. And why is that? Because they made an impression on those readers many years ago. And they'll always continue that. Ultimately, as authors, I'm sure you definitely agree, Lynn, that it's the one industry that we have the decision to either take a step back or continue down the path. It's the one industry that we have that choice and freedom to do so.
Agree.
Absolutely. And before we get to the very end, Lynn, of this amazing author interview, I'm now going to throw at you some rapid fire fan questions.
This is so
All
fun.
right. So here is the first question. And for the safety of keeping gamma rate as non-spoiler as possible, I'm going to try to make these as very obscure as I can be. So, for you as an author, Lynn, which is your favorite scene to write? A scene that's based around emotion or a conflict scene?
Emotion.
All right. Next one. This is probably one of my favorites. As a writer, which, in your opinion, is the most difficult of the 5 physical senses to emulate in storytelling?
Oh, touch. It is so hard to describe people's actions because it's not a movie.
Nice. And a follow-up to that, which is the most difficult emotional sense to showcase in storytelling?
Oh gosh, heartbreak. Because I feel like there's so much more depth to it than simply a smile. There's a lot going in. You have to unravel to write that out.
Very true. Very, very true. And the next one, most overrated and underrated trope in fiction.
Oh gosh, overrated. Enemies to lovers. I think humans are very complex and there can be so much range in between we can explore. Underrated. Let's see. Top of my head. Friends to lovers. Let's play up that intimate friendship there that goes more than just the physical attention.
Nice. All right. All right. Next one, themes or tropes in storytelling.
Themes or tropes? Like favorites or just random ones?
So ultimately, if
Oh,
you
do I
had to
pick one or
choose,
the other?
yes.
Oh, themes all the way. I love to explore and have it more than just a black and white. There's one bed, yay, but let's see what else we can do with that. Themes all the way.
Nice. All right. And these two are probably my favorite fan questions. So, in your book, you have a lot of incredible characters. As you mentioned earlier, some are very fun, wild, and so forth. If each character had to have a specific soundtrack song or score to them as they, let's say, walk into scene, what would those songs be? And we'll look at the main 3 characters, the top 3 characters in Gamma Raids.
So Lee is totally chill. He's gonna walk in with some chill indie song no one's ever heard of, and he'll just be cruising. Kat is wild and free. She'll be kind of like some clubbing music, and she'll be rocking out, and no one else can hear it. But she's just run into her own music. And then let's do Zane because he's fun. He'll probably have some rap music going on because he's very misunderstood.
All righty. And with those same characters in mind, if your book was ever picked up by a major movie studio or an indie film studio, who would you want in terms of actors to play those 3 characters? And bonus question, who would you want to direct the film?
Oh gosh, I'm not knowledgeable enough on that second one. This is so hard for me. I can never picture faces. I did make a post once. I'll go off that. Let's see. What's the guy that's dating Zendaya? It's her boy.
Oh, Tom Holland?
Yeah, Tom Holland for Lee or Timothy Chalamet, like the Dune guy. I think he could be fun. Kat Hanneman, someone spicy, someone feisty. I don't even know.
All right.
Someone wild. And then Zane's just got to be tall. He's just got to be tall and broody. So I'm not picky on faces.
From what you said about Zane, I could definitely see the actor who played the Frankenstein's monster in Guillermo del Toro's. I could possibly see because he does have the height. Brooding, definitely. Now, question is Zane, and you don't have to answer this and be as like spoiler free as non-spoiler as possible, but is Zane a very attractive character, or kind of like a very mysterious, like no one really knows what he looks like? Does he kind of keep to the shadows?
He's more of a shadowy guy. But yeah, he's very handsome.
Okay, then definitely that character from Frankenstein's monster from the movie Frankenstein with Guillermo del Toro. If you know who that is, viewers and listeners, comment down below so I can actually remember his name.
I'm excited.
And
Fantastic.
as the final send-off questions, Lynn, of this amazing author interview, we talked about a great many things throughout this interview, from how Gamma Rays got started, what you've learned about writing, your interaction with authors and so forth, and just about the industry and more. Oh, wait a minute. I forgot. There was a second question before that, which is, of course, community. How could I forget that question? So before we get to the final question, here's another one. So, as you mentioned earlier, you've had such great interactions with authors and readers on social media and just being part of that amazing community. How important is it, would you say, for new authors to not say experiment, but have the courage to jump into the waters of the indie world on social media and find one's tribe? And how important has it been for you and helpful to you to be a part of a community that is truly fostering a sense of creativity and community?
Oh, it's night and day. I don't think you can do the writer journey without the writing community. Like, they go hand in hand. From finding critique partners and beta readers, from finding hype friends, check in on you day-to-day friends. I think there's no other way. You need each other. You help get each other's word out. And I've actually found how selfless people are too. Like, again, you hope people will do the same for you when you extend a hand, but if they don't, that's also okay. You know, we're all here to destroy the gatekeeping and let people in and raise all boats. One reader is going to find your book. They might find your friend's book, and they keep going around. People like lots of books. So
Yes, absolutely. Very, very true. And now we get to the final two questions of this amazing author interview. With everything we've talked about, Lynn, at the end of the day, what do you want people to take away from Gamma Raids and from your voice as an author? And what would be your piece of advice that you would like to share with the viewers and listeners around the world?
oh gosh. Well, with Gamma Raids, that it's okay to be messy and to fight for what you believe in, because I don't know, at the end of the day, there's nothing else worth it unless your heart is in it. So fight for what you believe in. And as far as for other writers, just start writing, put the words down, and then raise your hand when you're ready.
Yes, beautifully said, Lynn. Beautifully said. And with that, viewers and listeners, we conclude this amazing author interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. Want to give a huge thank you to Lynn for coming on the show, making her official debut. Now, Lynn, where can people find you on social media if they want to reach out and connect, as well as buy a copy of Gamma Rates? And will you possibly be doing any live appearances, i.e., any book signings in the new year?
Yeah, thanks so much, Gabriel. Gamma Raids, you can find me at Lynn Hanks. I'm all over socials. You can check out my website. I've got signed copies available, doing a holiday bundle right now for $19. I'm on Kindle Unlimited to read free. And next year, so far, I'll be at StoryCon in Salt Lake City in February. I'll be doing a booth with some friends. You can come check us out. Come check out some more independent press books. And I'm just excited to connect with more readers.
Awesome, Lynn. Awesome. I will link all that down below in the description of this video, viewers and listeners. And if you'd like to see Lynn back on the show in the new year for the Writers Hub series, again, like this video, comment below, and subscribe. And everybody, thank you so much for joining us for another amazing author interview. As a final reminder, there is only 1 week left to pre-order Decimus, The Wolf of Rome. It will be going on sale December 24th, Christmas Eve. I am so excited to share that next book with you. I've gotten a lot of engagement and feedback on it. You will not be disappointed. And if you like to read the books before, you can go over to my website, thewanderingscribe.com, to buy a copy of The Gathering and Son of Persia from Barnes & Noble, or go on to Amazon and buy either an ebook copy or a physical copy to get caught up before Decimus releases. Until next time, viewers and listeners, thank you for joining us for another amazing episode. A huge thank you again to Lynn for coming on the show. And until next time, this has been The Wandering Scribe and The Wandering Quill, signing out, wishing you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Happy holidays, everybody. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, and wishing you all a wonderful rest of December and of 2025. We will see you all in the next episode. And finally, happy early New Year, everybody. Take care.